Okay. The thing about having a channel on Gnosticism is it comes the inevitable video explaining something about the Illuminati, which has nothing to do with any Ordo Illuminati that you may have heard of, but just the Illuminati in quotation marks, which I think really is just a metaphor for the demiurge and his agents in this sphere of matter and of the human condition in which the soul is trapped and of which we are conscious. We are conscious of that soul being trapped in this sphere of the Illuminati, the demiurge. And so here it is in all its glory. Uh, it's um, it's actually quite a depressing symbol, the symbol of the Illuminati, the eye in the triangle, so called. Again, nothing much to do with the actual order of the Illuminati, or certainly nothing to do with Freemasonry, which merely uh, uses symbols to understand the universe in which we live and the occult universe in which we live in a broadly theosophical sense. So again, I'm really bowing to populace bigotry and prejudice. But they're half right because basically, yes, and this is a connection with Gnosticism, the demiurge and his agents and his spheres, the lower worlds, as one might call them, and or inner worlds or outer worlds, I don't know. But as you can see, the words here are by and large quite negative, really. Um, well, they go from neutral, amoral, to very negative or immoral, I suppose, or causing of immorality, as it were. But we'll get to that at the end as well. So first of all, we start. Well, the basic there's a triangle, which is made up of a triangle and a trapezium, which is two parallel lines connected together by two lines at an angle, and sort of like a triangle with its top cut off, which is called trapezium, a trapezoid figure. And we have the eye, which is at the center of all things, and the eye sees all. Because the demiurge and his agents see everything that's going on in all the lower worlds at the same time. So there's no escape from the eye of the demiurge. But the essential, the pupil of the eye, represents simple life cycle. So energy comes down from the sun. It's converted to plant energy through chlorophyll, which is the green substance that you see on all leaves, and for the plant kingdom at least. And that energy is converted into organic energy, and then animals eat the plants, and other animals eat the animals that are eating the plants, and so energy, and then all plants and animals go back to the earth, and plants draw energy, nutrients from the earth, which have been sort of made fertile through the decomposition of organic material. So what I'm basically saying is that there's a flow of energy from the sun and from the earth round and round and round. And life cycles, I mean, most animals have life cycles, and you could say that there is birth, puberty, maturation, decay, and death, where the energy goes back to earth again. And lots of animals and plants have life cycles. One thinks of the life cycle of the butterfly, and for example, but there's uh, thousands and thousands of other life cycles, and where energy is converted to, well, energy is not lost or made. It just changes its form. So here we have the kind of the sort of wheel basically going round and round, energy just going from one thing to another. And most animals and animals have a consciousness of the life cycle. For example, the salmon has a consciousness of when it's supposed to swim upriver, or is it downriver? I always forget. According to the length of days, which stimulate the pituitary gland. So most animals have a consciousness which is rooted in the simple life cycle in which it is, or of which it is part, and indeed part of the life cycles of other animals as well. And in the sort of innocence, or part innocence of the human being, we could just be conscious of this life cycle. Spring, summer, fall, winter, and we could be conscious, at least in the Western hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, Western Northern Hemisphere, I should say, of the passing of the seasons. But I mean, there's monsoon season and pre-monsoon and post-monsoon season in other less temperate countries, and so and even countries on the equator have seasons, although less well defined than the northern hemisphere. And so we have this going on, and we could direct our consciousness to the flow of energy in nature, and even the beauty of nature at these particular during these different seasons, as it were. And each season has its peculiar or particular beauty around it. Like the beauty of fall, for example, and the beauty of winter, beauty of spring, beauty of summer. And we could celebrate these changes in the seasons at various points of the year. And we could celebrate the solstices and the equinoxes. And we'd sort of be simple pagan people, pagan of the countryside, just worshipping and feeling in tune with the passing of the seasons, and not judging anything particularly, and just seeing it all as a flow of energy, flow of natural energy from one being to another being. And human beings are sort of aware of this in an existential sort of way. And if it would be left as that, our consciousness would be pretty innocent and we'd be pretty chilled out about all of it. But as our consciousness grows, and I think this is, we eat of the apple of knowledge, of the tree of life, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and we become intensely aware that of the rest of the eye, the structure of the eye, and the top line here, is, well, we become consciously aware of rising and falling, so that everything falls, rises again, and everything rises and falls again. And from our sort of selfish point of view as individuals, we like the things when things are rising, we like it, and when things are falling, we don't like it. So we have like and dislike coming into being here. And then moving on out, we have the great triangle of the demiurge, which is the three. We have preservation, creation, and destruction. And when we become aware of these forces, we become aware of the essential, rather grim amorality that we are sort of imprisoned within these three forces. And it all depends on what you're looking at: preservation, creation, of destruction. And it seems, from a perceptual point of view, that the demiurge controls us through a complex system of reward and punishment. So these sort of eyelashes things, the demiurge is lavish with his rewards for strength and expressions of its strength and people who are successful, and he's lavish with his punishments, you know, the little that you do have is taken away from you because you haven't, uh, you buried your talent in the ground instead of making two talents and four talents. So we are punished, as it were, for slothfulness and lethargy, and we are rewarded for hard work. So there's a sort of Calvinistic sort of way of looking at the world, and people that are on the dole or people that are homeless didn't work hard enough, and people that worked hard enough live in a lovely house. Of course, it's absolute BS, but that's kind of the sort of way the American Protestant sort of way of looking at things. So rewards and punishments, good cop, bad cop kind of thing, nice parent, nasty parent. They get the job done by pushing and pulling, rewarding and punishing, and shaping our behavior, shaping the soul as it matures into adulthood from innocence of childhood. So we have the 19th century idea of the death of childhood innocence. And look at Charles Dickens and all, especially Charles Dickens, to find this motif in his writing. Um, and so we have the preservation, creation, and destruction, which the three forces that imprison us in a sort of inevitable kind of outcome of everything. Everything has an outcome. You start at the beginning and you have an end, and the whole of reality is shaped apparently by destruction, creation, and preservation. But this triangle has a top cut off. The red part of it is it forms a trapezium, and the trapezoid figure is very, very grim. It is said that if you have a house and you make an attic room, and you put a ceiling above you, and you're under the eaves of a sloping roof, and you create a trapezoid shaped room, and you put your children up there, because it could be the children's room or bedroom. It is said that ultimately they will go insane because the vibrations of the trapezoid are very grim and tend to make people go mad. Well, I don't know if it's just superstition or what, really. But anyway, the four corners. I mean, obviously, the four sides of the trapezium form the four elements: earth, fire, air, and water. But at their corners, is the great frustration, the great fury, the great the great the great fear, and the great sense of futility of all things. So that and also the trapezoid, the triangle with its head cut off, also represents dissatisfaction. So the area of the trapezoid represents, dukkha in the Buddhist sort of way of things, that we can never satisfied with what we've got. We always want more, and then when we have it, we're dissatisfied with that, and we want more again. Which is the basis of commerce, basis of consumerism and of industry, is to make people dissatisfied with what they've got and want more. And no doubt this will continue forever, well, for as long as there is organic life, I suppose. But then to complete the triangle, we have the Great Triangle, and at the top of it in black, we have hierarchical social structures. We have the caste system. We have the rulers, the priestly caste that control everybody below them. We have the soldier caste that keep the priestly caste above the artisan caste, who are just the oi polloi, you and me, in other words. So we are kept in check by the armed forces, the security forces of the state. And the state is controlled by media moguls, by corporations, by conclaves or of business people, Chinese business people, Indian business people, multi billionaires, who control everything, and money supply and wages and everything, and consumerist trends and everything. So we have this idea of caste hierarchical control, and which is what most people associate with the Illuminati, I suppose, is this bit of the triangle at the top. But so we have an increasing awareness of all this, until we get to this what we call the sort of sunburst part of the figure here, which is all these lines emanating out from the eye and the triangle. Now, also, I couldn't draw it sort of thing, but they also should be, with straight lines, there should be wavy lines as well, which represents duality as well. So the idea of duality is also born from the eye and the triangle. And that's very interesting. This kind of sunburst, if you like, as a symbol, represents increasing qualities. For example, increasing scarcity, for example, and increasing the other three qualities here are all increasing. For example, you start off here with a little bit of scarcity, and then it becomes more and more scarcity. So you fight against that by drawing on the energies of fury. So you fight other people for scarce resources, for example. The idea here we have order becoming chaos, and we have the forces of entropy increasing as we go out from the center to the sort of to the peripheral, and we have the universe getting colder and colder, and everything coming to a hideous stop. And we're fighting against this using our frustration, fury, fear, and a sense of but also a sense of futility. So ultimately, we know we're doomed, but we still keep struggling. We still keep fighting and grasping and ungrasping and grasping again. So as our consciousness reaches this point, basically, we see the whole of the demiurge. We see the whole of the horror of our situation as sentient beings. We become aware, aware of our human condition and the condition of the second law of thermodynamics and the condition of increasing scarcity, increasing chaos, increasing entropy, and increasing other qualities sort of increase. And it doesn't. We at this point of consciousness, I suppose, we become full of despair and we become suicidal, and we can't bear any more of it really. And at this point, a lot of people do commit suicide en masse. Sometimes, they form a sort of suicidal cult, and they wait for a UFO to come and save them, and they all commit suicide to offer up their souls to this savings UFO. I'm thinking of the Heaven's Gate cult, I suppose, in the last century, who became aware of the awfulness of the demiurge and this prison ship of matter in which the soul is trapped, and they decided to all commit suicide. And in committing suicide, to focus instead on deliverance from the demiurge and the sphere of matter, the lower worlds, and some kind of saving UFO would come and save them all. I mean, who knows? Maybe they were right. Maybe they had the right idea. But if also, there's 2 points made here. One is, I think, to understand all is to forgive all. So that when you reach a sort of bird's eye view, a consciousness which sees the horror of the human condition and the horror of our entrapment, in a way you understand everybody's actions, so that people are sort of burrowing around in their sort of caves and being troglodytes and fighting each other for the scraps that the demiurge throws them. Um, to know all is to forgive all, and with this forgiveness, you suddenly sort of say, well, I can't do anything about it. I can't fight the demiurge and his agents, and it's no good even committing suicide because I'll just come back as another form of slave to the demiurge. By transcendence is not necessarily made is not done through suicide. It's done through going within and finding the kingdom of God within, which is the second sort of point. That all this whole figure represents external reality, but within internal reality, if we create our internal reality through meditation or ritual or contemplation, or by doing good or leading the Gnostic life, then we transcend this whole Illuminati figure. And indeed, in a sense, it go round in a full circle, because by meditating, by going into quietude, by going into ritual and contemplation, we indeed go back to the center of the eye, which is just a simple appreciation of life cycle and of the second law of thermodynamics. And so we're no longer we reach a sphere of non-judgment, and therefore of non-suffering, because we just return to the innocence of childhood and the innocence of the animal kingdom, which doesn't see the prison that they're actually in. So obviously we know we're in a prison, but we no longer care. Whereas the animals don't know they're in a prison. We know we are, but we have transcended the consciousness or the awareness that we are in a prison, and through gradually through meditation and ritual and prayer and contemplation, replaced it with the idea that we are soul, and that we are transcendent of this whole bally mess, as one might say. But I can understand, the cult of Heaven's Gate that just all did commit suicide and wait for that UFO to come buzzing past. The problem is that if there was a UFO buzzing past, it would probably simply be sent there by the demiurge and his agents. So in fact, all these cult members are probably inside yet another prison that the demiurge has created. And so you've got to be careful about religion and about cults and about cultic behavior and compliance and conformance with charismatic leaders and other cult members, because you could find that you're just replacing one prison cell for another prison cell, and you haven't transcended anything at all, in fact. So be very wary. And I think that this sort of anti-Illuminati cult, which has grown up over the last, 60 years or something like that? Yeah, 60 years at least. It could be that you're just, by getting all angry and steamed up about it, you are just imprisoning your soul in yet another, in a form of prison which the demiurge has created, in the form of the anti-Illuminati cult. So you have to be very careful of David Icke and his fellow travellers, because how do you know they're not working, in fact, for the very soul keepers or prison guards that are already imprisoning you? You don't know, in fact, and you don't know, so you can't judge on one hand, but you also can't sort of just go along with it all as a sort of sheep. You need to think critically about everything that people say to you, including me, by the way, because I'm a bit of a nutter, a bit bonkers, really. So you've got to be kind of like aware that I've got fundamental psychological problems, and all my videos are merely expressions of psychological disturbance, and they're not anything to do with truth at all. So I would suggest, in fact, that you have to find the truth for yourself. That other people who say they have the truth, maybe they have a little bit of it, and maybe some of what they say is helpful at various times of your life, but it isn't canon. You know what I mean? It's not canon. It's not. It's not. It's be taken with a bit of a pinch of salt, to be quite frank with you. as indeed this whole Illuminati conspiracy and anti-Illuminati movement is to be taken with a big pinch of salt, I would suggest anyway. Otherwise, as I have explained. So the thing is that we start off as innocence, and then we reach a sort of consciousness of our condition, which we see in a negative light. But then we begin to see it, we begin to forgive it, and this energy of forgiveness takes us back to the original sort of childhood innocence, that we just saw. I don't know, saw a tree in autumn or a tree in winter. We thought that's lovely, and we sort of go back to that on one hand, but we also transcend the demiurge and his spheres and his worlds on the other. So we reach a sort of contentment on one hand, contentment with the knowledge that we have, which could make us really resentful and really angry and really kind of almost suicidal and paranoid and conspiratorial. So we don't fall into that trap, which is another imprisonment of our soul. We go back to the sort of basic amoral animal innocence on one hand, and yet we know all. Well, as I say, to know all, to understand all, is to forgive all. So I hope that the Illuminati symbol, explaining it, is helpful to you on your journey, on your spiritual journey. Uh, it's basically kind of describing to you the trap that we're in and the doors of the trap that we're in, and the mental funks in which we fall very frequently. We fall into fear, frustration, fury, and futility, and we have these overwhelming emotions, where which basically we need to transcend on one hand through understanding, and basically, or perhaps ironically enough, even use these emotions to navigate our way through the prison that we find our soul in. And ultimately, we are marking time, or time is marking us. We are keeping our lamps clean for the eventual return of the King, and the redemption of soul at the end of time, because this great triangle and the eye in the triangle cannot last. It has no eternal features. It is ultimately maintained by the power of the sun and the energy of the sun, and the sun itself is going to go out. Okay, along with the rest of the physical universe. The physical universe is going to become cold, and cease to be. So there's no eternal transcendent quality about the eye and the triangle. So I would suggest that once you have seen this eye and the triangle, and once you have understood the nature of transcendence, which is not to kick against the pricks, but to go with the flow, but to go with the flow with understanding, and then you can truly understand the nature of transcendence, the nature of soul consciousness. But having said all this, it all sounds very fine, in theory, and in symbolism, but in practice, of course, it's a hell of a job to do it in real life. And I mean, I haven't done it. I mean, look at me, look at me on Prozac and Tegretol and fucking, I've forgotten the other one, the antipsychotic drug. I'm a fine one to talk, really. Because understanding something in theory and applying it in real life are two completely different things, really. But I think I need to sort of stick with my theories and my occult theories. I find them of a comfort to me, even though I fall off the wagon and go into complete psychosis quite often, which and I don't like this is why I don't like talking to people on the internet, and I don't like having internet friends, because I find it very taxing on my brain. It's all that I can do to keep myself from throwing myself under a bus, really. So I don't have enough energy to sort of interact with other people and be kind of chummy with other people, really. I don't really like humanity, and yet at the heart of humanity is the very essence of transcendence. So if you hate humanity, you are actually hating that, which will lead you out of the prison of Homo normalis. So bear that in mind as well, you know. Anyway, as I say, I'm good at spouting theory, but not so good at living. And perhaps one day I shall just stop all this theorizing and trying to apply even a tiny bit of it to real life, and I might be getting somewhere for myself anyway.